Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the podcast wherein myself, Samson Folk, I co-host it along with my dear friend Trevon Heath. He is the Trey that pulls up. If you didn't get it, the podcast name is Pull Up Trey. I've been noticing that there's a lot of podcasts that incorporate the pull-up into it. And even more than that, there are other podcasts called Pull Up Trey or Pull Up 3. And I see
Ooh.
nary another co-host with the name Trey. I think they're scamming it, dude. What do you make of our place in the lexicon of wider podcasts?
I would say in terms of pull-up tray podcasts, I would say we were S tier. When you really think about it, we
Yeah.
really use the name. I use it as my handle. I really champion the podcast every single day, every single tweet that every tweet that I make, I'm a representation of this glorious podcast that I enjoy with my dear friend every single week.
I think based on volume, just of because you're a wonderful, supportive retweet hub friend, but just I don't tweet very often, right? Based
Yeah.
on volume, you're probably more of a shill for the athletic NBA podcasts than anything going on over here. We'll set the stage quickly. So for anybody who's watching these games, like AJ Lawson has 2 games of 25 plus points in a row. Jared Roden just had a fun performance. Orlando Robinson popped off a little bit. But what most people care about is the standings. And the Raptors have now, because they're 3-0 versus the 76ers, they've won the season series, obviously. They've also jumped them in the standings. The Nets are 22-43. The 76ers 22-43. The Raptors 23-43. They occupy the same lottery odds as they did when they jumped up to grab Scotty Barnes from 7th, where they are now. We'll see if the Raptors jump up. But a lot of, and this is an interesting thing, Trey, a lot of talk was about, because like, as you know, your perspective on the tank or whatever,
Yeah.
and Lewis's piece, it people get mad, dude. Like
Yeah.
people get angry when, and I don't even know what you said. You're like, I like when guys play hard. Oh, whatever. But, uh,
They're learning nothing.
but yeah, my so the Raptors, they've jumped. They have a worse pick. But my first question for you: what is your favorite Pokemon?
I don't want to be basic and say Charmander, so I'm gonna go Jigglypuff because
Wait.
what's wrong with Jigglypuff?
I'm just no. It's like Jigglypuff is your favorite.
Yeah, she's cool.
What kind of Pokemon were you playing, man? Holy moly! Okay, anyway, that is very surprising to me. Wait, so is Charizard like the dude
Yeah,
for you?
yeah, that's the
Same.
goat. He's like
Charizard, big deal.
he's the boogie cousins of of Pokemon.
Charizard is an emotional lesbian or whatever the hell. Whatever. Okay, this is Jesus. We're here to talk basketball, people. Yeah, the Raptors, they're picking later
Yeah,
statistically. While that might not be the case, we'll see. As Trey and I on the back end of these podcasts discuss prospects coming into the draft or out of the draft or whatever the hell this saying is, we're getting closer to the, I think, back end of, or like the big names. Ace Bailey
yeah,
is not considered in the top end. He's
yeah.
considered the top of the middle of the lottery, maybe, right? That's who we're talking about in this podcast towards the back end. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. 5 minutes in, not our best, not our worst. And remember, there are timestamps for everything we talk about here. Trey, I do want to ask you, Jared Roden, AJ Lawson, Orlando Robinson, are you finding anything interesting, not just from like you're watching the game, but
Mhm.
into the future, mining for like, maybe this guy plays going forward?
It's tough because like the teams that they've been playing like during this run are also
Hmm.
playing their G League lineup. So this it feels like we're watching 905 games probably for the last week or so. AJ's shot turning around or getting to a level that it has been the last couple of games is really nice. It's something that wasn't really like his calling card heading into the league, which is cool to see. I think the only assurity that I have from this, and S has tweeted this out many times, that if the Raptors didn't need to play all their 905 guys, me and you would be in Mississauga with a foam finger cheering for them to win a chip. Like they they would have been really stacked. You throw Jacoby and Mobo down there, and they would have been a monster.
I am kind of waiting around on that. Like,
Yeah,
just towards the end of the season, Jacoby, Mobo, Grady, all injured. Who are we here to see more than
yeah.
anything is those three guys. At least Jamal Shed is around. But the funny thing about that is that he got pulled because he was a plus 17 in a handful of minutes. And the Raptors were like, we have to try and lose. He was a plus 17 in 12 minutes, right? He had
Yeah,
5 points and 5 assists.
yeah.
He was the
Too good to
guiding
play.
hand, and the Raptors were winning. AJ Lawson goes for 28. Orlando Robinson goes for 25. I'll tell you from my perspective. Jared Roden putting up 25, 12, 5 with 4 steals. Jared was the guy who a lot of people around the Raptors saw as the natural two-way that Jamison Battle outplayed him for, prior to the
Mm,
season. And Jamison Battle just shot the hell out of the basketball and
yeah.
had his worst shooting game of his NBA career, maybe 3 of 12 this past one. But Jared is kind of showing off why he has that NBA intrigue. He has that Jordan Poole thing a little bit, where Jordan Poole was like a little bit like chubbier relative to an NBA player coming out of college and working
Mhm,
himself into the league. But Jared has obviously like toned up a bunch the same way Jordan Poole did. And there's upside there for an NBA player. Uh, I don't think like a super good one, but I think Jared is proving that he maybe can stick in the league. That's good for him. AJ, talking to AJ after these games, he has the term aura gets thrown around a lot, but he has a vibe. Like he's very warm. And he's
mhm.
there's a bubbliness to him, and he has these big games, and then you talk to him after the game. He's just like cheesing, dude. Because the basketball is AJ Lawson going to change the face of the Raptors franchise? Is Orlando Robinson going to carve out the backup big position and hold it down? Like these things, I don't know if there's a good chance of happening. However, on a day to
Mhm.
day basis, AJ Lawson comes from Brampton, is putting up major numbers in his home arena, the team he grew up loving, the team he grew up watching. You're a kid who played basketball in Toronto. What do you
Mhm.
make of somebody from, what is it, the Brampton Warriors putting up these big numbers
Wow.
for the
You're
Raptors?
really a you look at you, deep cut.
But he said it
Uh,
after the game.
you shoulda just took the credit. You shoulda just took it,
I
but
can't,
it's
dude.
fine.
I couldn't possibly.
I feel like there's like a lane. You could have been like the local Toronto guy. Like I've seen him as a kid. You could be like Sonny Vaccaro just walking
I've
through
been
the
here
gym like
like 2.5 years, dude. That was like when Nabil was like, "Oh, you don't know this like third from the right assistant for the University of Toronto team?" I was like, "No, how would I know that guy?" You know what I mean? Um,
yeah.
I have people around here that I ask, like yourself, like Josh, like Nabil. So
Fair,
anyway,
fair enough. I obviously it's super cool to see someone that one like really cares to like be here and be on the team. I grew up seeing Alonzo Mourning not want to show here, literally willing to end his NBA career because of coming here. So, like having someone that cares about it and is like mentioned mentioned guys like Andrew Wiggins being their OG and inspiration for playing basketball. One that makes me feel incredibly old because Andrew Wiggins doesn't he
you
hasn't been in the
played,
NBA.
you played against
Yeah,
Andrew Wiggins.
so I don't. It makes me feel old, but I think that's cool. Like it's shown like the impact of like the previous generation, like the Tristan Thompsons, the Corey Josephs, and now we're 5 to 10 years from now. There's going to be I played because of SGA. I played because of Dylan Brooks. Actually, if someone said they played because of Dylan Brooks, I'd be pretty surprised. But
I would be like, "You're kind of a psycho, dude."
so, yeah, that's kind of nuts. But it's like the same sort of premise. Like the level that Canadian basketball like has gotten to, we were expecting them to medal in the summer. So it's super cool to see. And we're gonna have our first Canadian born MVP in a matter of months. So it's just a testament to the last
I
generation.
gotta ask, like, is that important to you, the Canadian-born thing? Like, does that hit a little harder?
No, it's just my anti Steve Nash agenda. To be honest,
Is that linked
he
to the, like, politics of the South Africans, like, "The damn Boers," whatever, you know?
the apartheid. No, yeah, I feel like he stole an MVP, and then from there, the agenda has been anti Steve Nash
Oh, wait,
for a
wait,
while.
wait. Who did he steal it from, do you think? KG, Dirk,
Shaq,
Kobe, Shaq?
Shaq,
Wait, in Miami? Or did he have one last year with the Lakers?
like it was '05, I'm not mistaken. Let me.
So that's Shaq in Miami, right? Because they won his
Yep.
2nd year? What were his
He
numbers?
There was two. There's one where Steve Nash undoubtedly won, which was I think
Oh, so
'05.
Shaq was 2nd in MVP voting with 23 points per game,
Yeah,
10 boards, 2.7 assists, 2.3 blocks and he led the league in field goal percentage, and he was on a Miami team that won 59 games. That's
yeah,
pretty hefty. That's a nice season, especially because when you go back and look at Steve Nash's stats, you see, like, he scores, like, 16 points per game, and you kinda say, like, "What the hell is going on here, dude?" Yeah, he won at 15.5 points per game, 11.5 assists.
yeah.
I gotta tell you, the real thing that I hate about the stat line is only 3.3 rebounds. I'd like some more rebounds. And you
Steve.
know what? You're playing 34 minutes per game, Steve. I want more rebounds, especially since we're this far ahead, like, it's been 20 years now.
Yeah,
I'm looking back saying, like, the Russell Westbrook his MVP season where he got the first triple double and people said
yeah,
his rebounding numbers were inflated. It's like, yes, they are inflated, but the points per possession for the Thunder were better on possessions where he grabbed the rebound because of the grab and go aspect of it.
yeah,
And Steve, I would have liked a little more grab and go rather than 3 potential possessions a game, especially since they played fast and since he was so good. Revisionist history, but I'll still give it to Steve. We have a
fair
mostly Canadian listener base. I'm not trying
fair enough.
to
Miami did win the title that year. To put
That
in
was because
perspective.
Wade go to the line like
Yeah,
96
crazy.
times in 6
They
games?
literally stole money from Dallas. Eventually went to jail.
But do you
Insane.
see anybody, on the Raptors playing these games that could potentially be an MVP someday? Is that anybody for you?
I don't know. If AJ Lawson shoots like Klay Thompson, you never know, to be honest. Orlando Robinson is walking to near triple doubles these days, which just like Darko, like what a wizard. He can manufacture assists out of any spot on the court. Says a lot about the way that the Raptors play.
I It was shocking to me that Andre Drummond only grabbed 6 rebounds in 25 minutes. To me,
Yeah.
that was like Colin Castleton, he went for I got lotion on my finger. Colin Castleton, he went for 14 rebounds out of nowhere. Orlando Robinson grabs 12, and nobody on the 76ers grabbed more than 6. And it was Jared Butler who grabbed 6 and Drummond who grabbed 6. Like, these games are such an odd thing, you know
Yeah.
what I mean? But at least let's focus on AJ a little bit. I wanna highlight the things that I do like about his game. It's what I asked
Mhm.
him about, after his, 32-point performance. Having that confidence to, like, just let it fly. He is
Yeah.
very clearly, like, it doesn't matter to him. He'll take the shots he's supposed to take. There is no hesitancy in his game. That's a good thing. That's a big thing. But also on top of that, he is quick. And as we've seen with, like, Jamal Shed, for anybody who cares, Saturday, there won't be a live episode, but I'll have a rookie report, where I talk about all the rookies. Jamal Shed, his number one NBA skill is his quickness. And that wasn't a guaranteed thing coming out of the draft, but it has translated. He can play
Yeah.
faster than the average NBA speed, which is good. And so can AJ Lawson. He's quite rapid. He's athletic. He's very active defensively. And in games where, the shots come his way, it took him 20 shots to score 28, but like that's perfectly fine. 4 of 9 from downtown. Last game, popping the hell off. There is stuff here for him to be a real NBA player perhaps down the road. Now, it's not guaranteed. 24-year-olds who are 6'6" and 180, they don't always end up hanging around, even if they have a nice spurt to end the season. But there's real stuff with AJ. There's real stuff with Roden. Do you like these guys usually end up being maybe the camp invite the next season? Or maybe the Raptors do that like, hey, let's hook you up and let's do
Yeah.
something like we sign you through the end of the season and then it looks like X or Y coming into camp. You have a foothold. But as
Yeah.
far as those two, do you have a feeling about either? Because sometimes you have feelings about guys.
I think in terms of like translating within a role, I think Roden has like the defensive ability to like possibly stick. Like AJ, he's more of like a lanky mover, uses like his fluidity to get into certain spots, but doesn't necessarily like have a nastiness and like an edge to like blow up screens, pressure the ball. Like Roden has that, and he has a good lower center of gravity. He really gets into the ball handler. And if he's able to hit shots, like that's usually the pathway to how like a two-way guy sticks and becomes like an end of bench rotation player. For AJ to stick, like he's gonna have to be like a high level of shooter. And like Jameson Battle, for example, has shot the piss out of the ball all year. That hasn't even guaranteed him like end of the bench rotation minutes. It's just such a hard plane to get to. Usually the pathway, and honestly, through like the Raptors like bench mob years, defense has usually been the pathway to getting you more minutes, and then your offensive game usually comes along as you've gotten more opportunity. It looks like Roden fits that MO a bit more than AJ does.
Yeah, I agree with that. AJ though, like guys like AJ, they can find that footing and they can take off if that shooting just sticks.
Yep,
Uh,
100%.
but I do. My big question is related to the Frick question. Uh, shoot the piss out of the ball. Who do you think created that? Do you think that's one for the whites or one for the blacks?
Oh, 100% the whites. That feels like super Hoosiers, like adjacent. Like he's shooting the goddamn piss out the ball. So, just stuff like that. I don't feel like you could have played that in like above the rim. It just would have felt off. You know what I mean?
Mm. When did you pick this up as part of your vernacular? When did this enter it? Is this a I'm a podcaster now, I need some juice, or is this prior to that?
I think this is.
Did you pick it up at
I'm
the
a.
office?
Yeah. He just shoots the piss out of the ball. Yeah, I think it's more podcaster adjacent. It's better verbiage.
Okay. You know who's gonna be fun to talk about? We can attach a lot of verbiage to him. Ace Bailey. Do you want to talk about Ace Bailey?
Let's do it. He's like one of the most divisive, I'd probably say, prospects in the draft. So I'm wondering if we landed differently on this because typically as we look at prospects, we look at them the same.
We identify similar things.
Yeah,
I think because everyone has a hierarchy of importance for scouting, and you and I
100%.
think we share like a lot of things are important to us and they overlap. The Ace Bailey of it all, I based on what I've seen you say, I think we will be apart. I don't know if it's
I think
far,
s-
but
I think so too.
Ace Bailey, listed at 6'10", 200 pounds out of Rutgers, the Scarlet Knights, a freshman, is similar to Dylan. I don't believe the height. I think he's probably 6'8", six
Mm,
nine. But everyone is listed a little bit bigger. I don't know
yeah.
how long his wingspan is. We'll figure that out at the combine. It doesn't matter. I don't know. 17.6 points per game, 7.2 rebounds, 1.2 assists. Some Harrison Barnes vision there. 46% from the field, 34.6% from three, 69% from the free throw line, 54% true shooting. I'll give you some of the two big numbers here. He is
Mhm.
99th percentile in isolation frequency in the NCAA. This brother loves to flatten it out and best on best. And you look at what he does in the film, you look at what he succeeds at, it makes sense. He's a 41% shooter on his drives. There's two things intersecting there
Mhm.
that if you're 99th percentile, you're all the time isolating and you're not that impressive on drives, what do you go to? The jump shot.
Yeah.
And he
Yep.
is a prospect who you either believe some of the movement, you believe the stutter rip where he puts the ball down, or you believe he's gonna shoot the piss out of the ball and none of it matters. Where do you sit on Ace Bailey?
I think in the dictionary, when you see "shoot the piss out of the ball" in Urban Dictionary, like Ace Bailey's face is right there. Um, I'll start off with, like, all the positives that I've seen from him. I think when he's on the court with Dylan, he's playing within a role that will translate in the NBA. He has incredible feel coming off of the ball. They work him either coming off flares, coming off pin downs, and he has really great feel to open himself up and get to the ball and be able to get to a shot. That's going to translate within the NBA, translate with the Raptors like almost immediately if he were the pick. I think also when he does get the ball, when he is isolating, he finds really good ways to create within space that although he has limitations within his handle, he has the footwork and like requisite length to be able to get his shot off, which is super important when you're playing against defenses that are hounding you down, getting you trying to dig on you when you're doing drives. It makes it a lot easier to be an offensive scorer, be an off ball creator if you're able to be able to catch the ball, spin the other way, and use your length to shoot and score. Um, I think where the optimism comes from my part, one, I think the shooting is going to translate. He hits tons of guarded threes. Like he's shooting at a 44% clip, shooting his catch and shoot threes at 38%. That's going to translate within the league and make it an easier role. He fits from a lot of people's perspective. I've heard like the Jabari Smith kind of compilation.
I did think of that a little bit. However,
Yeah,
I don't think it's appropriate. I'll explain more once I'm done,
yeah.
but yeah, go ahead.
I think for him, one, he can put the ball down a bit better in terms of his dribble, but he's also just a more fluid athlete in the way that he moves. And Jabari Smith, some of the things that have kind of held him back in the league, he isn't the type of shooter or athlete that can be able to run off of an Iverson cut, catch the ball and create in a tight space from there. It's just not his game. More traditional big man. But Ace with his height, he can get to several different shooting slots, so it makes things a lot easier. I think as he plays with better players, and Rutgers was we now that we've studied two prospects, I've watched basic like 15 games of Rutgers, dog water team, just all the talent that was around him. He's gonna play in a situation where there's no chance that he'll be a 99 percentile isolation scorer. That just he won't play NBA minutes if that happens. So he's going to play in a more natural world that's more similar to like a Michael Porter Jr., where he's catching a lot of catch and shoot threes. He's using his requisite length to be a play finisher. I thought that really popped. Rutgers used him in the dunker spot a lot as a play finisher. They run a lot of baseline actions for him to get going as a cutter, and he has that feel to get in there and score. And I think his athleticism really does pop when he gets to be a play finisher overall. So I think that is going to translate. And then as well as the defense, like as a low man, he shows the instincts that he's able to block shots. He has some sort of consistency as a rotational like four. And I think he'll be switchable at the point of attack. So I see the thought process of where he's a winning player, but isn't necessarily a star. And that's someone you could take at the Raptors pick currently.
He is so interesting because it is that he doesn't fit the Jabari comp to me. He is more fluid. He is more
Yeah.
explosive. He's a little bit smaller. He
Yeah.
is extremely impressive sometimes the way he's able to plant and explode. And the fluidity to, he doesn't shoot well he's like 49% on layups, which obviously isn't very good.
Yeah.
He shoots 41% on his drives, which isn't very good, but he's very fluid. Like he has incredible shoulder flexibility and
Mhm.
mobility. The touch needs to get better at the basket, but he has access to a lot of different types of finishes. He can punch it like crazy. They run like rip screens for lobs for him. His like if the tag man comes too high and leaves him in the corner, or if the guy cheats the corner and there's a cut, regardless, he can be lobbed coming, corner to crash. And
Mhm.
he's just very impressive in all those ways. And yet he takes so many jump shots. This is why he's probably such a an interesting prospect with a wide array of opinions on him is because he should have a more expansive driving game. He
Yeah.
really should. And not even just like, oh, you should have a bag, like go get it, but like off movements, catch and go, all that kind of stuff. He just is so happy to take jumpers. And then as
Mhm.
you cited, like on guarded catch and shoot jumpers, he's shooting 44%. You know what I mean? He's whether he's sprinting into a catch, like sprinting into it, all of them are headed right. He can't sprint into,
Yeah.
catching anyone left, but or whether it's like catching triple threat, like jab, go over somebody. It's a little similar to Melo, maybe.
Mhm.
Just that comfortability shooting out of the triple threat. There's a lot of ways he can open up driving lanes for himself, and sometimes driving lanes just are really open for him, especially with his size and athleticism. And he just
Mhm.
stiff arms those out of the way. And there is like this scouting ethic, right? That talks about, why investigate why a guy is taking so many tough shots. And if a guy is
Yeah.
taking so many tough shots, it's usually because they can't get the easy ones. I'm left to wonder if Ace is one of those guys who actually that isn't true. Like it is you can apply that to a lot of players, a lot of tough shot makers. It's like, oh, you can't get
Mm.
anywhere more difficult. Like Sensabaugh, we love. He's a tough shot maker.
Yeah.
He he
Yeah.
can't he can't get deeper than he does. He's gotta be so damn
Yeah.
slick as a shot maker. But Ace, I can't help but think at the NBA level on a bigger court, there might be some players are better driving at the NBA level,
Yeah.
better getting into seams at the NBA level than they are at college. And he isn't that comfortable with contact, but he's not contact averse, I don't think.
Yeah.
It's just I I believe in the overall package of Ace a little bit more than I just believe in the raw shooting. Because I think the
Mhm.
shooting isn't as much of a having watched it all, I don't think it's as much of a home run as many people think it might be. I think he has to be an overall offensive weapon. Like you cited Michael Porter Jr. I'd be shocked if he shot it as well as MPJ. And I
Yeah,
know that's
that
a lofty
that's a
it's a
high
lofty
clip.
bar.
Yep.
It's a high clip,
Yep.
it's a lofty bar, but you think about who he gets compared to, you think about, like, what some of the numbers say, but I think he's gonna be more of a streaky shooter and one who has these crazy ups and probably some downs, but the overall offensive package as a guy who can catch and he'll have gravity, man. I just think there's going to be so much utility for what he does there. And you think about like he is a star and he does love that isolation. But then you look at like he's hitting 41% on his threes off of screens. He's hitting
Mhm.
52% on his twos off of screens. He'll play. You watch Rutgers, he moves. He's
Yep.
not just like he loves to isolate, but he'll move before he isolates, and you want to train some of that out of him. So it's like, okay, you're not holding onto the ball so much, but he'll move the defense with him before that, and he'll help out other players. And it's just, God, he's interesting from an offensive point of view. I'm I'm pretty high on him after watching him. But and as you mentioned, like the defense, but I kind of want to focus in on the 3-point shooting. Let's keep it there because as you mentioned, like that the guarded 3-point shooting is so impressive. A lot of those guarded catch and shoot threes are coming after catch and hold, and he'll hit a triple threat
Yeah.
jumper over somebody, and it'll come off of like he'll run a post up, they'll throw it into him, and he'll reverse pivot out beyond the 3-point line, jab jab, hit a triple.
Mm.
Like it's a vast array of shot making, but 35% on threes is
Yep.
not is not what most people would, elevate as elite shooting. However, his highlight tape is insanity. If you watch his
Mhm.
highlight tape, you could convince yourself he could go one. His highlight tape, if you select the best moments of Ace Bailey, is an absurdity. I kind of want to know where you think the 3-point shooting falls or settles.
Yeah. I think it's totally fair because when you look at his free throw shooting, and that doesn't necessarily translate to like high level touch. He's shooting 69% for the free throw line. But I think because of the level of difficulty that he's shooting, like he's shooting over two guys and the ref. So in some sort of instances, and he's hitting at a really high clip. I think the shooting is going to translate into a way where he's a winning player and a guy that has gravity and a guy that you absolutely need to guard because he also does that off motion and shoots the ball well. So you see aspects of his game where you can redefine like who he is and kind of subdue some of the isolation stuff that he's currently doing, and there's high level shooting out of those spots. Like if his shooting off of screens translates in the same way, and you have a 6'8" to 6'10" guy that can shoot high 30 to high 40s off of screen, that's a high level player. I think the shooting is going to be strong overall, especially when you cut out some of the difficulty that he's shooting. Like his pull up, he's taking pull up threes like he should not be taking. He won't take in the NBA. No NBA coach is going to let him. And his percentages from there kind of match the level of difficulty he's facing in those spots. In the moments where he's shooting the ball and he's able to get better opportunities, I've seen the shooting translate to some degree. So I'm confident in that.
I'm confident in him being a shooter, like a guy
Mm,
who teams they care about, and relative to his movement, probably really care about. I the next biggest question, I think we'll talk about his finishing and some of the defense, but I do want to ask, he could go top 5 quite easily.
yeah.
Top 5 wings who have vast creation packages, who have vast, let's say, scoring, more scoring than creation, vast scoring packages. A lot of times people start to talk about, especially if they isolate a lot, an offensive engine. Why aren't you and I mentioning that at all? Is an important caveat here. Like, walk me
Yeah.
through why, and in fact, why hardly anybody talks about that.
I think there's limitations with his handle. He has really high hips. He has a really hard time getting low and getting into those tight spaces, which is tough for someone of his size. And I think because of that, where you see a lot of his drives and why his finishing isn't good, he picks up the ball fairly high, fairly early within like his driving, and that leads to him having to try to utilize strength. I don't think he's like contact averse, but he doesn't have the frame that helps him create additional space. So he's
Mhm.
usually use trying to use his length to create to get to the rim, and then also having to bump off of a guy that's usually like a guy that's 22. Actually, now these guys are 20, 24, 25. To be honest. And he isn't able to create that sort of strength. And then
Isn't
also
there,
just to be
there's
an
that
edge.
one guy from Kansas who's 26, right? It's
Yeah.
like his third senior night. He's like, hell yeah, dude, we're out here.
Like Auburn, their average age is 23. This is ridiculous. Grown men. But I and I think to be an engine, you have to be a playmaker. Like it, his passing is the one thing that probably will stop him from like if his shooting translates in a big way, would stop him from being like a high tier star. Teams aren't going to let you. They'll get in your space. They'll double off of a flare and make sure that you aren't able to get the ball. And if you aren't able to punish them with quick processing, quick point five basketball, and feeding the low man, feeding the guy in the weak corner, you're just much easier to guard. And he hasn't shown that he's able to be a quick enough processor to punish the defense in that way. He usually is catching the ball, hoping to flatten them out, and then using a triple threat to either shoot or like create from that standpoint.
So, man, there's a difference between the tenor of this conversation and the three or the two conversations we had prior. It's
Yeah.
objectively, and we didn't talk about Ace prior, but it seems we like Ace less than we like VJ and Dylan. Um, do you, I said at the top, but do you think he represents the top end of the next tier? Is that how it seems to you in the draft?
Yes, I could see other guys being better though, because if his shooting isn't at, I don't think his shooting can be average and him justify that pick. It's gonna have to be like good to great. Because if you're a guy that can't put the ball on the floor, like he hasn't shown, I think he has the athleticism and length to do so, but he hasn't shown that. And handle is a really hard skill to develop. We're seeing it in real time with some of the rap with Scotty. It's just a really hard thing to learn. So I could see there's a guy that we'll talk about in I'm sure in a couple weeks, like Trey Johnson, that does a lot of the same things, but can put the ball on the floor a bit more. I can see some guys going above him just simply because of the fact that they've shown playmaking chops, they've shown the idea they're going to dribble, and like the idea also of Michael Porter Jr. There is no other player that like fits that archetype of player, so it's hard to assume someone is going to replicate that.
Yeah. By the way, confirmed for the Trey Johnson episode. Josh Codanera will join us for that. He said he wanted to talk about Trey
Oh,
with us. So
the legend.
yeah, yeah, of course. The backbone of all of the draft coverage from myself prior to this. Um, the interesting thing is that you mentioned like that high pickup point. Well, let's talk about the finishing. We'll dive into it. Why
Mm,
that might be better. And finishing doesn't necessarily mean like handle to get there, but there's some plays where Ace very clearly there's not a lot of pressure on him as a dribbler. He's in motion after the catch, or perhaps even running like pistol action to be a guy who throws like a pitch to a guard coming up court or something like that. And he's able to, if there's a big enough gap, push dribble, throw ahead dribble, whatever,
mm,
catch, gather, and has so much aerial dominance and so much punch at the rim that he can really just teleport there. And that will show up in transition at the NBA level, I think, a
mm.
bunch.
Yep.
His aerial dominance will show up as a cutter. It will show up in a lot of different areas. And I think it'll show up as a guy who drives off the catch, not necessarily cutting, but drives off the catch in the wider court. As a
Mhm.
creator, I have the exact same concerns as you. That early pickup is it's gonna hurt him. And
Yeah.
especially see how often he resorts to these big, wide, sweeping euros. And these are tough shots, and there might be tougher at the NBA level too. In transition, he loves the exact same move that you love. The move that you got injured on is that big,
Mm. Yeah.
sweeping like step through, right? In transition is or
Yeah.
it's like the step over. You know, your right foot goes to your left side of your body. You pull the Shea does it all the time. Dwayne Wade did it all the time. It's that big, it protects the ball. You get your, you can finish with the left. Ace loves that move, and he can punch it off of that move, and
Yep.
he can punch it through contact off of that move. These types of things, I'm very interested to see if, like, I think it's a bit of a swing for his potential if his drives off the catch are something where he's finishing at the bucket or he's going more so towards his finishing on push shots where he's 14 of 23 on his runners and floaters as a college player, which is very strong. But there's just like he's actually shooting better on those than he is on layups. But that in itself is a bit of a like, you need to make the easier shots. You need to take more easier shots. You can't be the 6'9" guy who hits all the floaters. We believed in Emmanuel Quickley's 60% floater number, and then it just didn't stay there
Yeah.
because it's a more volatile shot, right? Like
Yeah.
there's just his finishing is a little bit more up in the air, but I don't know how anybody could watch and like say no, there's not significant potential there. There's significant potential there to me when I watch him.
Yeah. I agree. Like the vertical pop like stands out like with his finishing, which kind of makes the driving so questionable because he's able to punch it over guys that are much stronger and bigger than him. And I think the play finishing is going to be good because he has actual feel around the rim. Like he's able to pop open and open himself up in a really good way. Similar in the sense that like a Chris Boucher, although he's not the biggest strongest guy, he has the feel and opens himself up in ways where he can then use his length and vertical pop to score in that function. And I thought all of Ace's like best driving, they usually came from that stutter rip in a triple threat.
Yep.
If the shooting pops off, he's able to catch the ball and get downhill. Then he's able to punch it in that
He
way.
has an
And
elite first step.
yeah,
He like
he can
that's
do it. Yeah,
He has a better first step than these like relative to his size than VJ. He has a better first
yeah,
step than Dylan. He has a better first
yeah,
step than Cooper. He just doesn't have the requisite package of skills afterwards, but he's rapid, dude. He's
yeah.
very he's he's a tremendous athlete. He really
That
is.
and that's why he's so divisive. Like I see people say like he could be Paul George, which is like such a high plane of like of fluidity and handle
This
and
shit
driving.
means something to me,
It's
man.
but like that's like the quintessential like wing player of like the 2010s. And like he has the fluidity, he has the athleticism. It's just a matter of can you mold this player into playing a certain way? Because I think he could be, even if his driving doesn't get to a high plane, I think he could be a 20-point scorer, hitting shots, being a great cutter, and winning in transition. Those are easy ways of him to get 20 points and be an efficient scorer. And if like the defense, especially like as a low man, I think like him and Scott would be great together. And you would have a super long lineup that's funky, that blocks tons of shots, that is also switchable. Um,
You know
it's
who he
just
reminds me more of
yeah.
than Jabari? He reminds me
Mm.
more of Trey Murphy than he does of Jabari.
I can see that. Yeah, they have the same vertical pop too, long steps. I can see that.
Yep. But well, oh man, the Paul George segue is a good one probably because we talked about fluidity, athletic pop. Paul George is maybe the greatest, most fluid mover of a man his size
Yeah,
ever in the NBA, right? And
yeah,
especially for a guy who wasn't just like, oh, I pop off in the dunk contest, but I haven't like put it all together elsewhere. Paul George is loved by, people who are coming of age now because they're like, this guy was the coolest dude.
yep.
um, he was lithe around screens. He had point of attack pop and significant point of attack pop on defense. Let's talk about the whole defense thing with Ace. As you mentioned, he very clearly has a knack, not just for like chase downs from the wing, wing defender perspective, the transition defender perspective, but also, being a step away or two steps away to be a hawk at the rim to kind of wipe the glass. Is there anything at the point of attack for you when you watch Ace Bailey?
I I think he's gonna have to, at the point of attack, he's gonna have to guard the team's opposing force. I just think when he's playing other guards, he moves with all of his steps being as long as possible and using his size in that way. But I think he can hold up against some of the lighter wings in the NBA. But of chasing and coming around guards, you have to be able to like pitter patter and be able to really bend in ways to get over screens, chase other guards. And I think the reason why his most success comes as the low man is because that's where you can elongate yourself, use those wide steps and like block shots, fill in space, things like that. But I don't think at the point of attack you'd want him like guarding guys over and over again. Probably in like switch end of shot clock situations.
So I'll give the stats, the points per possession rank in play types. Of course, these are not infallible statistics. You always want to go watch it. But in spot up situations, he's 63rd percentile, pick and roll ball handler, 67th percentile, isolation, 85th percentile, post up, 97th percentile, pick and roll man, 79th percentile. Where he's struggling mostly at 24th percentile and 20th percentile is off of screens and handoffs. When you
Yeah.
put a person between them, that's when he's having trouble. But he very clearly, to me, and this is a great, I talked about it ad nauseum about Cooper Flag, is like big guys who move pretty well, who know how to not overrate their movement, but to let their length be a buffer to support their above average movement. I think Ace actually fits into that. I think that Ace is a guy who will be a pretty strong switch defender at the NBA
Mhm.
level because he has a decent idea of that. What I worry about is if he's guarding opposing fours, and the Indiana Pacers are not the blueprint for the NBA, but they represent that, like, holy hell, we're getting posted up and a guy is getting killed
Oh
every
yeah,
time. Ace would.
yeah,
Ace would.
100%.
But if he plays on a team with Scotty Barnes,
Not an issue.
then
Yeah.
maybe it's not an issue. But like, yeah, it's just there's clearly defensive potential there. And when I hadn't heard anyone really talk about Ace's defense, people
Yeah.
don't talk about his. Well, I'm sure some people do, but as somebody who follows some draft people, I hadn't really seen it talked about, and so I assumed it was bad. I assumed it was bad, and then I came away thinking I actually like it at the collegiate
Mhm.
level. It's not perfect, you know.
Yeah,
It's it's
100%.
it's 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 merely good, maybe a bit below that, but at least in my perspective. But I can see it being strong. at the NBA level, especially depending on the role he's trotted out there in. I think there's significant defensive potential here, which really helps out because I think that his offense has more question marks than it's been talked about, and I think his defense has a
Yeah.
higher floor than it's been talked about.
Yeah,
But
that's what I came away watching as well. Like the defense was the most surprising part, and I also think his movement as well, like how he moves on and off the ball. Like the numbers don't suggest that he moves off the ball because he's such a high level isolation player. But I think like from the Raptors perspective, that's how I look at all these prospects these days. I'm watching I'm watching Jared Rowan games for this
if
team.
there's a Washington Wizards fan
It's,
tapping into like the Pull Up Trade podcast for scouting,
yeah.
firstly, I apologize that this isn't attuned to the Wizards depth chart, and secondly, that's gas, dude, because that's you know what I mean. Because they know this is where the good scout talk comes from.
That's tough. I think there's like a clear and obvious fit for him to be on the team and play with Scotty and play with Ingram. There would be a super long team. They'd be a team that would be able to shoot the ball really well too. And Ace, although like the passing and processing isn't there, I think the Raptors, in the sets that the darker runs, like the passes that they make are like fairly obvious. It's come off of this screen.
Orlando
Scotty
just got 6 assists, dude. Colin Castleton the game before that, 6 assists.
you you're gonna be able to come off Iverson. Scotty Barnes is going to flash down the court, and he'll be there if you throw him the ball. He's gonna score. So I think the fit makes sense, and they could be super nasty defensively and offer tons of rim deterrence because if you have him, Scotty, and Jakob, all guys that can rotate, defend the rim, it becomes a very hard task for defenses to get in the paint against the Raptors.
He like if everything hits, he could be so fun. My
Yeah.
my last question for you about Ace. Ace Bailey is that boy nice player because if you watch his highlights, you're just like, damn, he works out of the triple threat. He shoots over top of guys. He sprints into catch and shoot threes. He has thunderous dunks. He has big weak side blocks. He has chase downs. He is fluid. He is powerful at times. And if you're just highlight scouting, it's insanity. Where does he rank as like if he enters the league, you get a little bit of that cult of personality following him because Brandon Ingram and Scotty Barnes both have pretty big, you know, like fan
Yeah.
bases online. Could Ace also have a heavy hitter online fan base because of his play type?
Fairly easy. Like there's if he hits, there's a chance he's the most popular player on the Raptors. Just because of the level of shot making that he has. The Raptors haven't had a shot maker like that since Kawhi Leonard, Vince Carter, and sort of
Norman
that
Powell.
shit. Yeah, he that's another guy. Shoot the piss out of the ball.
Yeah, dude.
One time Summer League meant something to me.
Oh,
Holy.
dude.
But he's that type of guy. Like he fits like the quintessential like 2000s DeMar DeRozan type of guy, and that's both of our favorite Raptors for years on years. So I think there's a chance where like he's like a big star if he is that level of player.
Yeah, and if he plays anything like Trey Murphy, then he'll end up better than an unnamed Turkish big man, and that'll be great, dude. Any parting shots? We finally have a shorter podcast.
Wow, look at us.
I don't know if we've gone under like 54 minutes. Are you excited for this weekend, dude? You're
I
you're
am.
turning. Oh, do you? Well, I guess that's up to you.
I
It's personal to some
I can
people.
sit. I can sit. So this weekend we're heading to a ski resort because I'm turning 30 years old. I didn't think I'd so
30,
my
30.
my wife has been planning this for the last I want to say month now, month and some change, and she's titled it Birdie 30. So everyone has been saying it for the last few weeks. It's gonna be super fun. I finally reached the age where like I'm older than the majority of the Raptors players, which is like super duper odd. Like the average player, what's the next? They'll be what 2005? No,
2005, I believe, yes, is the
yeah.
next
Oh,
class.
Jesus. And I couldn't fathom. someone in 2005, like being that age. But
Yeah, my youngest sibling was born in 2000, and she seems
yeah,
young to me, you know? And
yeah,
I
that's
used to because when I first started thinking about the draft, really, like, I wasn't 15 years old being like, "Who are the Raptors gonna draft?" and, like, thinking about it heavily. But when I was 17, I was like I thought about the draft a lot, and I used to do my own mock drafts, not
mhm.
because I knew, but I would just be like, "Oh, I wonder where guys will go." And these guys are around my age. They're a little bit older. And then you look back, sunrise, sunset, and you're 30, and these guys are 20, and you're like,
Yeah.
dang gum, that's 10 years. That's a 30-year of life.
Who on the Raptors are older than us? There's Garrett Temple. Um,
Might just be Garrett because Kelly got
Gim-
traded.
yeah, Kelly got traded. Chris is older than us.
Chris
No,
is older
yeah,
than
he
us.
is. He
Yeah.
is.
Well, it's important we make the distinction between you and I because you are older than me.
I think
I'll pull up the depth chart. We'll see the ages. I think it's probably just 2 guys.
yeah, that's insane. Because yeah, average age
Uh,
of Raptors has to be like 24 at most.
damn. The difference, it was so close to being important. It was so close to being important. In 1995, October 15th, Jakob Poeltl was born. He's a little bit younger than I am. He almost split the
Jesus.
difference, dude. So, yeah, it's just Chris Boucher, January 11th, 93, and Garrett Temple, 1986.
Damn.
1986.
Oh god.
Cool.
Back to the Future.
Man,
Holy.
Ulrich Shamshay was 2 days away from being born in 2006. 2 days. December 30th, 2005. Oh my lord, dude.
Jeez,
That
he's
is
so young.
something.
Yeah,
You know,
man.
not even like Brandon Ingram is an all-star. He's been in the league forever, and he's 1997. Isn't this
Yeah.
crazy, dude? Oh,
So,
we're old. I'm
this is
feeling it, dude.
old geezers. I'm heartbroken. Ulrich got hurt too. I this time period was supposed to be my 9:05 time where I go to the games, cheer them on, get to the playoffs. That's not even going to happen because the team got nuked because the Raptors are they're playing Raptors games every week. But
The allure of his Fandiar Haney could it can't draw you back on its own.
the good thing about going there, I loved seeing the power that he had over every single
Bro,
person in the arena.
he's aura farming at the 905 games, dude. Come on. I know you want a t-shirt, don't you? A little louder. Scream a
Oh,
little louder.
and I could see it in his face. He was doing the pump fakes with the shirts as the kids were. And I could see his face. He was feeling so good. You never know how someone's gonna react when they have that type of power.
Absolute power corrupts absolutely. I believe is the saying. I have long held actually I can't say this on the podcast. You know, this I could disaffect too many people. I have a very hot take regarding t-shirt tossing. And so if anybody ever, you know, sees me in person, make sure to ask me about my t-shirt tossing take. That is too hot for the podcast. Trey, is there anything you want to say before we get out of here?
Who do you want to talk about next? I guess that would be the only thing.
We're doing with Curly and hopefully Mac. We're doing players you should watch during March Madness. That is,
Mm.
we might not even talk about the Raptors next week. We might just be talking about like, hey, the Raptors are bad.
Yeah,
Here's some guys who are interesting in March Madness. Right? That's fine.
yeah, that's a podcast. We,
It is a
we could
podcast.
do that.
Yeah, dude. I
Yeah,
have no
that's
problem with that. We've talked so much Raptors stuff, and this team is not offering a ton right now. So I'm okay to talk about draft prospects, especially since that's like what a lot of people want anyway.
yeah.
You
That's
know,
what.
to some degree you're supposed to represent what interests you, but also, you know, the fan base is looking for a certain something. And also these players interest me. We already started going into college.
Mhm.
Why not just stay there partially? I mean,
Yeah,
may as well. Podcast. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
All right, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, all that stuff that helps us out. Yes, we are one of Canada's favorite basketball podcasts, but we want to be top dogs. We don't want to be 3. We don't want to be 7. We want the same position that we want the Raptors to get in the draft class. We want to be number 1. This
Yes, sir.
means something to me, man. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in. Whether you got into this in the morning or at night, have a blessed day and goodbye.